Tracy Willis. I am with Holland YRC, and I was one of the people that went to the conference in Las Vegas. We're going to try and just give you an overview of what we did there. It was really great to go. So much, for me, going to that conference is seeing the wider world of the IBT and the Women's Conference, to see that there are so many across the country. And so that was my major first impression of it. It was actually in the Mirage. We stayed at the Flamingo. It was a short walk. It was really nice. We didn't have much trouble at all. Let me do this. The opening of it was the theme of it was basically high stakes, high standards. A lot of the themes of if I were to boil it down, a lot of the themes were organizing, especially a lot of the places like Amazon was talked about a lot in their efforts to organize Amazon. We were definitely trying to, they were definitely trying to talk about getting engagement from people, getting people to come to meetings, as well as to come to opt in to memberships across the country of those states where they could not opt out of. And getting good contracts for people, and their emphasis obviously was on women organizers, which leads us to our first subject. You guys want to do this? I'll be back. We're all going to try and present a little bit from what we know.
All right, so the slide that I'm going to talk about in the class that I took that really did some, really woke me up to what organizers are. I mean, when I first took it, I was thinking I was taking a class to help organize the women's group, like actually organize. It's not at all what it was, not at all. So it talked about there's 5 different phases in order to organize and put together a non-union company into becoming a union company. Like Tracy was talking about, Amazon was talked about a whole lot. And it talked about each of the 5 phases that you have to go through. And you cannot skip one, you cannot go back to one. If you miss it, you're not going to do it. So the first phase was, obviously, you have to research your employer. Who the employees work for, what kind of dirt do they have, how do they treat their employees. Things along those lines. There was, in identifying your natural leaders, you're actually looking within the company. Who in the company is union, proud? Who wants the union to be there? Who are your ones that are going to be an actual leader and not just an activist, that actually have people that follow them and that want to do more for the union to become a part of that company? That was different, though, than building your committee. In building your committee, some of those leaders that are inside of the employer are going to be on your committee and help you out. But most of your committee are the people who are helping you orchestrate and organize all of this together. Who can you lean on a little bit more, and who's just an activist and just, a voice? They don't have followers follow them. They're not like all that much, but they're there for your cause. They're still an activist, and they're still a really big part of it. And of course, don't slow down till you get the majority, and then you want to come out and actually go public and pull your vote. Most of these things are done behind the scenes, and I didn't know that. I had no idea whatsoever. But in taking this class, it kind of opened up and made me realize that there's a lot more to getting a company to turn into a union company versus, just always have been there. Like I came into UPS, and, I've always been union since I came. I didn't know what organizing was and what these women went through. There were 5 different women that went through and talked on the women organizers. We had 2 individuals that were IBT international organizers and 2 that were field organizers. And I think that really hit home, because each one of these women from different nationalities, because there was Bianca Aguilera was Hispanic, Felicia Walker was Caucasian, but Georgia Ritchie and Vivian Levita, I think is how you say her last name, they were both black. And the different approaches that they had to it really made it, you know, open your eyes and see that there's a lot more to it than what most of us just think about as organizers. And then that would be the sticker and their magnets that they gave out. And there are these. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tracy.
Bobbi?
10 ways to improve meeting attendance. Yeah.
We are right in the middle of, or starting an organizing drive, but it's the truth. Most of the organizers that you see are men.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of women in the workforce, and they don't relate
They talked
as
about
much,
that.
you know, to a man as opposed to a woman organizer sitting there. So, you know, that needs to, you all need to be a part of the
Most
organizing
definitely.
drive.
We have the women, how they put it there, we have a softer way of being able to know what women needs especially. If
Oh,
it's, UPS is more male, you know, but when you get into, Amazon, and a few of the other bigger companies that they were talking about that I can't remember because it was Amazon. You have 50-50 or 60-40, and then you're having men come in and talk about it, and they need a little bit softer approach from a woman to go, no, you're not throwing that down my throat. So, yeah, I actually got really interested in it, even though it wasn't at all what I anticipated.
The next meeting, the meeting that I went to, or at least that I'm gonna report on, I went to many, but we had to solidify which ones we wanted to talk about. I went to 10 ways to improve meeting attendance. It was really geared toward general membership meeting attendance. I was kind of coming at it from the standpoint of wanting to do that for the women's committee and sort of gain some visibility and membership in that women's committee. But it was good advice for both sides, you know, for both of those organizations. The very first thing that they talked about, there were 10 ways. I'm only going to do about 5. I don't want to go through everything you saw. Let me get this on. You have to want to change. You have to want to, if you're having meeting attendance problems, there is, you know, it's kind of a subject that we're having today. But if you have meeting attendance problems, there are things that you can do, but you have to make that decision to want to change your format, your way of doing it. They talked about a lot of different apps that you can use, sort of like the CAN network apps, but there are apps that literally one person can reach 5 people and get the word of mouth out about this or that or the other. So using technology, using, of course, Zoom, you guys were just talking about that beforehand, using different kinds of ways. There has to be, though, a commitment to actually learning about those things and using them. And reaching out, and they were there to say, you know, reach out to your other locals. If they're having better attendance, if they're a larger local or whatever it is, see what they're doing that works. And stuff. This meeting was really good for finding that out. They brought up a really good idea of the reward system, a punch card. If at the end of the year you've got 10 punches on your punch card for attending a meeting, well then you'll get a special raffle or a special prize or something like that. Raffles and so forth. Because it was a women's conference, childcare. What keeps women away? We know that we're the ones who are 90%, well, I'm quoting statistics, most of the time we are the people involved with the child care. We can't make it to meetings because we can't, can't be with, we're 5 days a week we're away from our kids working. It's hard to be on the 6th day of the week away from our kids working. So we could bring them along, if we could have child care activities, a movie, a video, a volunteer from the membership just to go and just sort of be the babysitter and start push play on the movie or whatever it is you're going to do. That's going to get more interest and more people are going to find it easier to come. Make it easy to come to a meeting. The last one is changing the atmosphere, having guest speakers. But also having guest speakers from other walks of life. It doesn't have a subject matter that is pertinent to that union at that time. You know, if you're having pension issues, I know that we've had pension people come and talk and so on and so forth, but that's not really what they were focusing on. They were focusing on more from really an entertainment standpoint, a seminar on self-care or something like that, you know, whatever it may be, something that that you would find interesting, and change the location. You know, have it at a different have it at a different meeting space. Even if it's still here in Lexington, why not try doing it somewhere else? You know, in more accessible to people, library, something like that. I'm not sure. And then going back to the communication with the apps and everything, if you're getting feedback from people, about what they want to hear, what is their, you know, that's a two-way street. You're telling about the meeting, and then you're hearing back from them saying, okay, what's keeping you from coming? So acting on those things, getting entertainment speakers in here for that reason, based on that information, and also, playing music before and after, having it be a little bit easier of an atmosphere. Not so dry, not so boring, not keeping the same, we know we have to do the financials, we know that's always something we have to do, but is there some other way we can present that that's gonna be less dry and boring? Have volunteers from the audience be that, who they're gonna know when it's that speaker's first time, that member's first time at a meeting. So go over to them, talk to them, focus on them, and so sort of make them feel welcome. So, so basically just changing the tone of it. Instead of just reporting financials, etc. Oh, women's history.
Women's history?
Yeah. Do you want to start, or we're gonna
It's
have
okay, I'm just gonna stay here.
Oh, you're gonna say that's fine.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk just a minute about a workshop that I chose that was my favorite, and it's highlights in women's history. It was taught by Karen Jones. She works for the IBT in Training and Development Department, and she works on something called the History Project. Now, Karen is very knowledgeable, she's a very comfortable speaker, and she makes history come alive because she's just a wonderful speaker, and I would love to take more classes from her. The class was a look at the women's leaders and events that brought about change in all of our lives throughout the centuries. And Karen, in my class, mentioned 47 different women. So Misty and I are going to weekly just make installments on the women's committee group we have on Facebook and cover those. And Misty and I took it at different times, so we probably, I may not even had the same 47 as she did, so we need to kind of double check that. An example of a woman that she talked about was actress Hedy Lamarr. Hedy was an actress who did 30 films. She was known for being beautiful and just gorgeous. But her real achievement is just a footnote in history, which is a shame, because Hedy had brains with her looks. And Hedy, during World War II, co-invented a system of radio signals that guided torpedoes. Now, she wasn't taken seriously until the 1960s when somebody revisited her work. And because of that, we now have cell phones, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. So she was the foundation of something that just changed the world. But yet that's a footnote because, she was just known for being a pretty woman. So Karen, in her talk, she was getting us to think about history differently. That we need to concentrate more on women's achievements, and because there are many of them. So the Brown Betties, they actually were in my history class. Maisie and Jessie was the first and second female UPS drivers. They were lifelong friends from childhood. Now, during World War II, women, of course, took jobs that were not traditional because men were off to war. And so Maisie became a driver at UPS. At the time, drivers' helpers were called brown buddies, and that transitioned for the women to be called brown betties. So they were the original brown betties. Kind of a sidebar, their lives were just amazing. They were also Rosie Riveters. They were extras in movies, and they were paid swoon girls. They got to go to Frank Sinatra's concerts and swoon when he hit the stage to get the crowd hyped up. So they have led a very good life. And I will say Maisie was born in 1921 and Jessie was born in 1925. So they obviously getting up there. But they were there, they enjoyed the history class. You could see their little eyes light up when you know the old pictures were brought up, because you could see that recognition in their eyes. What impressed me was how they would reach for each other. They held hands a lot during the history class, and you could see a real sisterhood there, which kind of tied in with the theme of everything. They both agreed, and they both had little Teamster jackets on, that the union really enhanced their lives, and especially at work. So the only complaint that they had at all was that Jessie said she hated wearing men's pants because they did not fit her female form. And interestingly enough, that's probably still the same today. I'm not a driver, but I'd say those pants still don't look very comfortable to me, but anyway. So I got a lot from that history class. I would definitely take it again. And I would encourage dads with daughters to maybe look at some of that, because I just think it would be really good to pass down to your daughters or your sisters or you know, whoever. But it was a great experience. I want to thank the e-board for sending us. We learned a lot. I think we brought a lot of it back. And I know, for example, they are really incorporating a lot of the things that we learned with the women's committee. And I think, Charlie, if I'm right, didn't you have your daughter help some?
Yeah, my kiddo helped with the PowerPoint presentation because we're kind of technology illiterate here for the most part. So this was mainly my kid who's turning 16.
But that was covered in one of my classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really neat, because they said, you know, incorporate your kids, you know, let them help with things, you know, like, you know, somebody could sit here instead of me, or, you know, different things like that. And they were saying, you know, find ways to engage your kids and teach them about the unions and the Teamsters and contributions over time. So I thought that was kind of interesting that she had her daughter help with this presentation. I thought she's already living things that we, you know, learned. And so anyway, thanks again for sending us, Mike. It was great.
All right. And I think it's pretty good, just a side note, that the Brown Betties have their own trading cards. Oh, here it is.
Yes, they have their own trading cards.
So one of the classes that I took, and it hit home to me, I've been through a lot this year, and most people know, a lot of people don't know. I lost my mom this year. I've been through a lot of tragedy this year. 45 days after I lost my mom, my sister lost her dad. So she lost both parents this year. We've been through a lot. So this one hit me just as hard as can be. I mean, in the opening ceremony, the lady who went through and did the class, taught during opening ceremony, was named Gretchen Grindle. She's a LPC, been practicing for, she said, over 30 years. This year was her 30-year anniversary of practicing. And she made me cry the first day, she made me cry the second day. But I learned a lot, and some key points that I wanted to bring back that I didn't know if a lot of people did is that I was completely thrown off by, your sleep cycle is only 1.5 hours. That's it, to go from the beginning of a sleep cycle to the end of a sleep cycle, and we go through multiple of those a night. So when you're going to sleep, and if you're looking at your mental health, it needs to start with eating, and it needs to start with sleeping. You need to put good food into your body, which a lot of us don't do. We like the carbs, we like the sweets, but sleeping is a really big one, especially those of us that work preloaded. yes. We don't sleep hardly ever. So with naps, they're about 45 minutes, which are a half of sleep cycle. So 6 hours is okay, 7.5 is better, 9 is what we should be getting. And that's unheard of these days. Unheard of. For an adult to get 9 hours constantly sleep, you know, if we do hear somebody getting it, we look at them like they're a stranger. Like, what in the world? Like, what are you doing every day? The ACE test was a big one as well. And it was more about how do you address somebody of not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. It's adverse childhood events, and it can be anything from hearing mom and dad screaming and yelling when you were a kid to going through some huge life trauma events. One of the big things about this test is it's pretty accurate in if you're going to have high blood pressure, if you're, you know, going to have mental illnesses, things along those lines, just by the score that this test gives you. And I thought that was really interesting. Gretchen also told us respectful ways of how to say no, because I know a lot of the time those that want to give will give and give and give and give until we're completely depleted. So it's one of the things I'm going to go through, and I won't go through it today because I kind of feel like we're trailing along here, so I'm going to speed my part of this up. And I'm going to add, like Alice said, and like Tracy and I have been talking about, we're going to do a lot more of this on Facebook. Stress care like a recipe. If something works for you, write it down. Because usually when things are going right, you forget about, you know, what you did to pull yourself out of a slump. And de-escalating your central nervous system breathing. Okay, that's a mouthful. But the way she broke it down was it's 4, 7, 8. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, let it out for 8 seconds. And in 2 minutes, that's all it takes. It has been scientifically and medically proven to actually go through and de-escalate your central nervous system. And that's go to the bathroom, she said. Everybody's got a bathroom break. Go to the bathroom for 2 minutes and just sit there in the stall and just take a deep breath. 4, 7, and 8. And she had us do it in class, and everybody was like, wow, okay. We were kind of all mellow at that point on what was going on. And she was as well. So this is one of the slides that we have. We have many of her slides in particular because I was just snapshotting everything. She didn't want us to take notes. She said if we wanted to, we could take pictures of her slides, but we weren't there to take notes. And another big one that she said is it bleeding or on fire? It's not an emergency. It's not something you have to fix right this second unless it's bleeding or it's on fire. No matter if it's my kids, no matter if it's my boss, no matter who it is. I can take 2 minutes and step back from you overwhelming me with what problem that you have you think it's an emergency. It's not bleeding, it's not on fire. Let's calm down, take a few deep breaths, and reevaluate this. So, that's it for me. I'll let Tracy finish up in his one.
In the class that I took on that, it was, when she brought that, is it bleeding or, you know, or on fire? So many of the women spoke up and said, I know, I had this, you know, a lot of them were stewards, a lot of them were having to deal with whatever, you know, with the COVID happening, you know, whatever is going on at home, taking care of somebody who's sick at home, also coming to work. And one of the ladies brought up, I had just finished talking about somebody who took, you know, as a steward, she had just finished talking to